All right. Well, good morning and welcome back to the Outer Circle Inner Stillness conversations and reflections on recovery life and the spiritual life and how they interact and inform each other. And my name is Reese Basimio. I'm a counselor here in Gresham, Oregon, and with good friend, special guest, former boss, Orlando Rivera. Hello, Orlando.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
Yes. How are you these days? What are you up to in the counseling world?
Well, I'm kind of working on the other side of the coin. I have sort of put the counseling on a sabbatical, if you will, and now I'm teaching and teaching future counselors whom we desperately need out in this profession about the elements of counseling and what that entails.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And where do you teach?
I currently teach at Portland Community College. I currently teach two particular cohorts, which is a grant driven cohort for BIPOC individuals, those who are seeking to work within the profession.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've been doing teaching on and off for a long time.
Well, I think I know this. I technically, I'm going to go back to the last century. Technically, I started in 1992 teaching and working with gang kids, but it wasn't counseling, it was computers. And I didn't think computers were going to go anywhere. I know, a little ashamed about that, but I left that and then I didn't do anything for a while. And then I actually came back to teaching at the college in 2004.
That it?
So, yeah, a little
Yeah.
while.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Funny thing about those computers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No regrets, though.
I'm glad. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's been your favorite thing or one of your favorite things to teach?
All of them? I suppose if I really were to pin it down, it would be because I have a love for doing groups and providing group service, but I also have an affinity towards teaching those basic components of basic skills in counseling. So I would generally say the elements of counseling, basic counseling.
Mhm. Yeah. It's funny how, like, those basic elements, they never get old,
They
and
don't.
yeah, and even me, I mean, I'd consider myself a reasonably advanced counselor at this point, but, like, I mean, the basics of just, like, what is, like, attunement or, like, what's happening when, like, I make eye contact with you
Yeah.
and hear you all over the way. Like,
Yeah.
like, even in some of these very, very sophisticated, fancy, like, internal family systems, big modalities, like, a lot of it comes back to, like, like, can I listen to you and be present with you?
Yeah. It's so funny that you say that because one of the last things I generally say in that particular class is whenever you feel stuck, go back to basics. Because we will advance and we will learn and we will, absorb new different techniques, etc. Some we'll be afraid of, some we won't touch, some that we'll stick to. But at the end of the day, as I tell all my students, just be open to going back to basics and it's okay.
Yep. So, which I feel like uh, is a good principle in a lot of arenas. So, I mean, talking human relationships, like you
Yeah.
feel stuck with a person, go back to basics. Like, are you actually hearing the person? Are you actually speaking honestly, truly with the person? Some
Yeah.
foundational things like that.
Yeah, I'm currently doing a MI or motivational interviewing training with the folks back at NEC or the Northeast Caribbean ATTC with through SAMHSA. It's a 6-hour course. I get up, at 5 o'clock in the morning to be on time at 6 a.m. So we do 2 hours a day for the next 3 days. And as I tell my students or tell anyone else, it's all about keeping oneself open with integrity and honesty about where you're at, wherever you're at in terms of your profession, and being honest with yourself about maybe I should tune up a little bit here, or maybe because I don't ever say that I know it all. I always say I'm learning it all.
Yeah, that does seem to be probably the safest place to be, is always in a position of being a learner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, interesting you say that. So, so this series that we're doing, it's loosely themed around like recovery basics, sobriety basics,
Hmm.
sobriety essentials, things like that. where I've been compiling a bunch of ideas, little quips and maxims that seem to be say something about like this is like a recovery essential. Let's explore this. And one of them I think has to do with honesty. Honesty, integrity
Yeah.
as definitely an essential, definitely a basic. Like like you should be doing this if you want to be sober and succeeding at sobriety and everything. So wanted to capture some of your thoughts around that.
Sure.
Let's see, it's a very big topic. So and some of the other context. So we're doing this group and do a couple of men's groups also, and we're doing this specific series on integrity repair, where we're
Hmm.
looking at what are the ways that we have practiced deception, what are the ways we've used deception to survive, what are the impacts of people using deception on us. So there's a lot there, and um, we seem to be unpacking these two major facets. Like it's important to be honest with others, but it's also very important to be honest with one's own self as well. And so be curious some of your thoughts. So if one how would you discern if you are truly being like honest with yourself about like what your condition is, what your needs are?
Well, yes, it is a very huge box to unpackage, if you will. Uh, I think the thing that comes to me immediately is the reflection part, like providing myself the time for self reflection, thinking about some of the elements of, gee, did I say that abruptly? Did I mean to say what I said to that person or that situation? I could have been maybe nicer, or I could have said it differently, right? So looking at the integrity of how I come across to other people. Well, take this for example, right? When I'm here with you, I'm right now I feel totally relaxed, totally me, myself. I am who I am. And as I think back, I'm still reflecting on how honest can I be, and how vulnerable am I willing to be in order to talk about how these sort of reflect back to me. I often do this, if not daily, but pretty much throughout the entire day, literally. It's sort of ingrained in me that this is just what I do. I don't have to stop and think about it. There are situations where I'm responding to a student, and then I almost immediately think, oh, I could have used another word. And I stop myself, and then I correct it. And then I make the admission in front of the entire class. It kind of shows a little humility, shows a little bit of a humanistic view of like who I am, and it's okay, and just modeling it's okay, to make a mistake and then self-correct, right? And
Mhm.
that's just the me part. That's the me taking care of Orlando, because I'm just as important, but at the same time, I don't want that to overshadow the work that I do.
Yeah, I love that idea of like the immediacy of I catch myself in an error pretty quickly and take action to amend it right away. And what you had said too of you do this sort of reflection throughout the day because it's just what you do. And I love that um, that way of life component to it. Like it's not this like big huge deal or this special program or this magic trick you're doing. Is just it's become part of your character, part of who you are,
Yeah.
which I think is an important thing as we talk about sobriety in general. A lot of these things we do, um, like like sobriety is not the short term like diet that you go on for a little bit.
No.
Like you get sober for 30 days and then you're done.
No.
It's much more I'm becoming this kind of person. So to be an honest person, one who's well, I guess that I'm thinking a couple of terms because to so there's this idea like being honest, but there's also this idea of being like authentic. And like you're
Yes.
saying, right now you feel like you can be like authentically you,
Mm.
which that's awesome. I'm glad I'm glad you can do that here.
Yeah.
Uh, and then, but I think I think another feel of that too. That there's some places where I feel just really relaxed, and other places where I feel like I have to front in some way or put up a mask or put up some part. And And I suspect, as I've been talking with guys, that that's um, that happens for a lot of people, and then for some people, we get so used to wearing our masks that
Yeah.
we forget that they are masks, and the idea of taking them off is both terrifying and also kind of bewildering because it's like, well, what else is there to me? Uh, I wonder if you might speak to that a little bit.
Well, there's many facets that we have, but one thing I want to go back to is I didn't get here like overnight. In other words, I wasn't able to do those self-reflecting. There was a lot of denial, and no, that's not what I meant. Well, you got it wrong. You heard it wrong. I did all of that. So, jumping into to recovery doesn't mean that this happens on a. It's a lot of work behind it, which now leads into the question that you asked me. There's still a lot of work. Um, the self reflecting is just one element. Being authentically your own best friend in many ways, and catching yourself. And I'm going to use an analogy and see if it works. I don't know. We're going to figure this out.
Well, we like analogies.
Yes. So if I'm on a cooking show and I love the Food Network, and not that's a shameless plug, but if I in fact am doing a cooking cook off or bake off, I'm going to get judged. And when I get judged, I need to hear not only the good, but also the criticism, because I can't get better unless I know what it is that is missing or I could have done, or a different technique. Gee, why did the cake, fall flat, etc. And when I hear the criticism, oh, I know what to do. Much the same way in my life, right? So if I don't hear the feedback from others, I'm not going to grow. And so it took me a long time to be open about it, to be vulnerable, to accept other people's feedback. Yeah, I still get shaky and nervous, like, oh my gosh, I'm doing MI and now they put me on the spot. What do I say? I'm going to say the wrong thing. And you know what? It's okay. It's how I learn. I'll speak for myself. It makes it a lot easier for myself to be authentic, to be real. As sometimes it's said in the hood, be real. Um, and I think that's one of the main reasons. You know, in order for us to connect with the other person. So if I want to continue in my realism of being who I am, but at the same time not be offensive, I have to be mindful. I have to use trauma informed tactics, if you will. I know it's a big buzzword, but actually, it's been around for a long, long time, right? We just didn't call it that. But it's just an ongoing practice that I continuously do. So I'm always checking on myself. I think of, like I said, the big bake off, I need that feedback, right? And so the more of that feedback that I get back, the better I can improve me, because I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
I, yeah,
Yeah. Uh, yeah. So you're not done yet, which means you're half baked.
I am half baked. Good, I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Um, Still got the soggy bottom, but anyway. Uh, so a question there. So I'm imagining, like you said, here's this classroom situation
Yeah.
where there's this concern. Oh, what if I say the wrong thing? And I feel like a common approach a person like a teacher might take in that situation would be along the lines of, well, I'm gonna say what I say, and like, just what people can think what they will, but like whatever, like they're just them. And I think I've fallen into that mode a time or two myself, where and I guess I call it the defense mechanism I put up is
Yeah.
I'm going to make myself impervious to other people's opinions and other people's critiques, and just I'll just believe in myself or something.
Yeah.
Uh, and what you're saying seems, well, I think it is really wise, but also it seems like very much the inverse of that, where you actually like open yourself to people's thoughts, comments, critiques, as a learning measure. And
Yeah, that's an important element. We as human beings, we need a model. We need to model what it is and how we would like to be treated. We often go back to the golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated. Well, there's a platinum rule, which is treat others the way they want to be treated. And I think the truth behind that is being, the authentic self. but also to be open and be vulnerable uh, to what other people have to say and or how they respond. You don't have to necessarily agree, but you can at least be there to listen. Yeah, looking at the other point of view, I think there's, like I said earlier, there's a lot of different components, a lot of different elements with regards to the integrity part of it, not only with the self, but also beyond that. Somebody asked me an opinion about something, anything from politics, religion, etc. I will give it to them, but I'm not going to offer it, just freely out there, because oftentimes giving out opinions, and again, this is just my opinion, is often not necessarily the best way to have a conversation for me. So I won't infuse like or start off a conversation with an opinion. Well, I think XYZ, the way you do this podcast can be done differently, because I'm gonna, invite you to, a verbal fight.
Right. Yeah, I do notice that that flavor of conversation where someone leads with an opinion versus leading with a question, and I mean it's a practice I try to do, like leading with curiosity in a lot of my conversations. And I noticed if I'm not doing that, it's usually because I'm feeling like insecure or feeling defensive or
Yeah.
feeling threatened or just like I'm seeing my agenda more than I'm seeing the other person, and so I'll lead with like a here's what I think sort of idea.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier something about a defense mechanism. They're not going to go away. We
Yeah,
know where to pull them out. We've had them for many years, and we know that they work. But they often work in a very hurtful way. Um, Not always, but for example, good healthy boundaries is good healthy boundaries. It does add this element of protection for not only you but also the other person. But if I start off and like I said, this is what I think. Well, I think what you're doing is wrong or incomplete, etc. I think the main thing here is being mindful. I guess that's the word that comes to mind, is being very thoughtful about one's verbiage and how it's used. I often have a pause when somebody asks me a question, whether it be open-ended or closed, or even a reflective question, and I often will take a moment. It's something I've learned over the years, because it allows me to gather where the person at, because I'm just not listening to the words. I'm seeing them. I'm looking at all the nuances. I'm looking at the body language. I am hearing all the words that they're saying. I'm answering with my heart, and I'm going with my gut feeling. And I don't know if you noticed that I was just moving with my making gestures, eyes, ears, heart, and gut. And I do that because it helps remind me of where I'm at. Like, where is the focus? Is the focus on you or is it on them? Right. And I think that piece of it is really important.
I think so. Yeah, yeah. Remembering where the focus is and where it needs to be. I'm appreciating this approach to honesty and integrity that's really based in mindfulness and in a knowing of self. And because yeah, it seems like if one wants to be connected, and they'll say like that's one of the main reasons to practice honesty is to have a true connection. Um, I can't fully bring myself to you unless am honest about it, and I can't truly be honest unless I know what's there. And so that the practice of mindfulness, of reflection, of just getting to know, like, who is Reese? What are the parts of Reese that come up in this situation, or what are the needs, the desires, and like what are the inner workings? So
To thy own self be true.
yeah,
That's what comes to mind. And it's a lot easier said than done, because it's a practice, it's an action. And I think the only way a person can actually get there is to continually look at introvertly where they're at, what they're saying, what they're doing, etc. And how can I make it better? How can I improve? It's a constant.
hmm
I've met many of people who are just set in their ways. Often it's said that's just how they are, right? Or to me, again, it's that defense mechanism just coming out one more time. Just what they're really saying to me is, I'm not willing to change. I'm not going to embrace it. I'm not willing to listen. This is how I think. This is how I feel. If you don't like it, it's my way or the highway, that sort of a thing. And you know what? That maybe that's where they're at, and I embrace that.
Mhm.
I say, well, I'm not going to be able to convince or change anyone's mind. They need to do that for themselves, which is the basis of counseling, right?
Right.
But at the same time, I'm not here also to fight, right? Um, when I think about like the longevity of life, one of the thing that constantly comes out in all these different things that we hear about longevity is not to be angry, not to be angry with others and or with yourself. And so I often look at that as sort of my track or my pathway or my philosophy on, okay, what's bringing anger to you, right? And so then I have that tough conversation. The other thing that I do is I also have an honest buddy, a friend of mine who happens to be a therapist, but uh, he's very upfront and honest, and he'll frame it and he say, "Well, I want to say something, but again, I don't want you to necessarily take this in offense, but this is what I see." Right. And that's what I need. And I think everyone should have some kind of a someone to bounce things off. And as long as they're not going to be the yes person for you, but they're going to be the honest person.
Mhm.
Because when you get the honesty back, it helps you reflect back on, okay, what is something that I can do that can improve me?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think of this idea of, like you said, with this idea around anger, being able to, like, honestly, truly reflect and notice. I notice I'm feeling angry, or I notice my anger part is rising up in response to some sort of threat. Which is, again, it's that practice of self reflection and practice of mindfulness, knowing your own parts and why they're there. And it does seem like that becomes a platform, if I can speak on behalf of my parts,
Yes.
very honestly, that that supports connection. It doesn't have to drive another person away. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be unhealthy people that are just offended by everything. But if I'm with like a reasonably healthy person, and be like, hey, here's this honest feeling, um, and I think if I can talk about it as this is a feeling I'm having, it's not
Yes.
the true me. My true me is just really curious, really connective, really wanting to just like be with you. There's a lot of room for, you're here with me, I'm here with you, I have my feelings here, you have your feelings here, but we can talk about them as this, almost like parallel track going
Hmm.
on.
Our feelings don't define us. It's just the feeling is what we're experiencing at the moment, which really brings up a really interesting situation that actually happened a couple of days ago. I received an email. We know that emails can be misread and misinterpreted. So I received an email just yesterday or 2 days ago. And the very beginning of the words were, I'm really, I'm terribly unhappy with, and that's everything else went blank. I, I, I looked at it and immediately this anger just boiled from the very gut of my body and it just came up. And all of a sudden, it was in my head. And there's a term that I use, which is the itty bitty silly committee, for lack of no, I don't want to say the other word, but this committee in my head starts to go off and thinking, how dare they? Right. And again, this is all in my head. How dare they? Who do they think they are telling me? I'm trying to be nice, right? And it's all about me and not about the other person. And I didn't respond to the email because I know better, right? And so that's another thing. It's like I have that pause that I said earlier. I have the same pause with my emails. And thank goodness they have that little thing where 30 seconds you could just pull the email back. But I sat with that and I stewed in my own anger with intent because I wanted to go through all of that feeling, and this one took a little bit longer. This one took about 2 hours before I finally was able to embrace what was actually being said. And I was able to recite. And I actually had a conversation with that person on the 3.5 hour mark where I was able to share with him my feeling, right? being authentic and real of who I am, and they embraced it. And it was just a beautiful scenario because in my head I was thinking, well, I'm not going to go to their Halloween party, and I'm just not going to invite them, and I'm not going to bring any extra food for them, and all that stuff just like pounded in my head. I was like, why are you doing this?
Mm,
It's so much work. And a lot of people don't understand that there's a lot of work behind, a lot of the emotions if we allow it. If we allow it. But
yeah.
if you work through it, which is part of my recovery and being real to myself, I can work through it with myself and be a better person for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm loving the way that, yeah, I'm just loving a lot of things about that story, but there's like these practical components of, again, just really truly honestly acknowledging, hey, these are my feelings right now. It's this rage, it's this very visceral, like in my body, like I want to react.
Yeah.
I, don't want to invite you to my party, that sort of thing. um uh and in the way you told that, it seemed like that honesty with your own self became the launch point for, well, now that I've owned this is what's going on, now I
Yeah.
can work with it. Now I can address the anger, express it, put it aside, and then ultimately, go to the person. And it sounds like, you weren't at all like lying or hiding or being deceptive with the person, and in not giving like the full brunt of your age to the person. There was no compromise of honesty. It was more, but it was maybe more bringing more of like the fullness of yourself, like the actual you,
Yeah.
and a lot of the context of the person, which sounds like what the person was able to receive a lot more. So
Yeah, that's how it happened. And I always start off, may I speak candidly, or may I be open, or will you allow me to express myself? And I'm constantly, always asking permission to me is really important. Whenever I want to express, I need to ask permission. And once they allow me to do that, then I know I'm able to then express how I feel, not directed at them, but directed at what's going on with me. Right. So this anger, this being upset, frustration, whatever it is, at least it gets out on the table. Once it's out on the table, then we can look at it and sort of pick it apart, if you will, and be able to see, oh, where is it coming from? Right. And if I really, really dug deep, which I did, a lot of that was coming from PTSD from yesteryears. Ooh, you're in trouble. You sent a bad email and people are going to know and you didn't do it perfect. All that old stuff came back. And it really made me think, gee, I still got stuff to work on.
yeah,
And you know what? Stuff like that does come up. But I believe that what works for me is that if I take it and embrace it, like what happens in an embrace? When you do an embrace, you bring it in, you bring it in close, you bring it to you. So I often tell people, take whatever is angering you, just embrace it. You bring it in a little bit closer to you so it doesn't have that power. And then if it doesn't have that power, then you can begin to start working on it. And that's usually how I sort of take care of that piece of it.
yeah. Within the internal family systems framework, we do a lot of that. Of maybe we could talk about like giving an embrace to a part, but definitely offering compassion, offering
Hmm.
affection, offering just like a welcome. And much as if you offer that gesture to a small child, like a small child's like running and jumping and clawing and grabbing at you, oftentimes just like settling down with them for like a nice deep hug calms things
Hmm.
immensely, and they get what they need, or they're able to say more clearly, here's what I need, and things get calmer and get better. So
Yeah, it makes me think of an animal. Take a cat or a dog, and they're very hyper, have a lot of anxiety. All you have to do is just take them, hold them, embrace them, and just whisper just sweet words to them, like "It's okay, it's okay," and you'll notice that they begin to calm down. And in much the same way, we're also creatures in a sense where we got to take care of ourselves. And so that inner child in me needs to be calmed, needs to be reckoned with and told, you know what, it's going to be okay. Why? You don't need to beat yourself up anymore. Those days are over. Right.
yeah,
And so I get to embrace me and I get to see myself calm down and then I get to reason it out. And then I'm able to feel comfortable with me again and say, you know what, that was just another part of me that I needed to take care of.
yeah. I mean, coming back to like recovery basics and things, it seems like a very big deal for these men, for these women to be able to recognize, hey, I have an inner child, I can be nice to them. And that gesture of like inner gentleness, inner compassion is huge when it can be accomplished. But for whatever reason, and for a lot of reasons, it tends to be a tricky thing for people, or for a lot of reasons, they have like disdain for their
Yep.
inner children, or they're overwhelmed by them, or they're just like, I don't like kids. So it's definitely a journey to go on. So shifting gears a little bit
Sure.
to talking about honesty and integrity and authenticity. We've been talking a lot about what that means to be honest with yourself, based on a lot of like self knowledge, self reflection, mindfulness. And in there, there's this big component of, if I'm honest with myself, that also means I'm taking responsibility for myself. And it seems to pave the way for a lot of, reconciliation and things. But I'd love to explore a little bit about honesty with other people. And there's I think two main dynamics I'm wondering. One has to do with when one is in recovery and also has a committed partner. Like um, should the honesty there look like? And the other component I'm curious about is when one has like an accountability partner, or like a sponsor or recovery peer, someone you would reach out to every other day or so for a check-in. Um, how honest should honest be, or what feel like essential things that you should be bringing out about yourself in that situation?
Well, on the one hand, I currently don't have a partner, and so I could only reflect back to when I did have a partner, and I wasn't very honest. I wasn't taking my responsibility, and I use a lot of the defense mechanisms. Because it was safe. I felt comfortable in doing that, but I felt awful at the same time, knowing that I wasn't being upfront and honest and taking any responsibility. Um, but I realized in that 6-year relationship, I began to become honest and letting them know how I felt, and taking on the responsibilities of, maybe I forgot to do something or say something, etc. But I can't speak too much of it because I've been without a partner for many years. So, I let me just speak to the other piece of it. I do have someone that I bounce things off of. Someone that I do work with in recovery, and it's not always necessarily the sponsor. It's other people in recovery who have the same amount of time as I would have. Someone who has 35, 36 years. I feel comfortable in speaking with them because there's going to be a lot of things that I'm going to be able to relate to with regards to their experiences, although that's not always the case. But I do find some comfort in taking the responsibility when I'm called out on certain things. Well, were you being honest about what you said to that person? And I was like, well, and usually if I start with a long word, a short word that I elongate, well, I already that's my dead giveaway. Or if I say, so okay, right? And that's Orlando's little defense saying, okay, you're gonna tell the truth, so be gentle with yourself. And it helps me sort of come out of my shell, if you will, to be open to and to be vulnerable to that other person to then take that responsibility. And that's just how I do it. Other people, do it differently. Just It's just my comfort level. So yes, I think it is an important piece that we all need. Speaking of recovery, we all need to be honest with ourselves, because what's the worst thing that can happen? We relapse.
Right.
And honestly, I don't really believe people recover because they want to relapse. I think there's an inherent reason why they want that sobriety, that recovery. And it's really often tied into their honesty, not only with themselves, but with other people.
Hmm.
If I cannot be honest with you, for example, what am I doing here? Why am I here?
Hmm.
Right. And so I need to be honest, you know, not only with myself, but with other people. It's an important component.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, why go through all of the work to be sober? Because it's a lot of work. And having something like I guess like the other venue would be like I have something really purposeful to do, and this really meaningful sense of purpose. But what we're talking about is a sense of connection. Like if I can be truly honest, truly open, there can be this really true connection. And that could look like I'm saying truly, here's things that I did. I think it'd be a lot of here's what I'm feeling, and some of here's what I'm struggling with,
Yeah.
some of here's what I'm thinking. Um, but yeah, but it sounds like you're saying having that makes the recovery work worth it, or that in itself is a good end to the sobriety labors.
I believe it is. I mean, let's take you and I, for example. We connect when we connect. And although there might be 6 or 8 months in between, when we meet up again, like today, it's like we just spoke yesterday. Right. And I think that's where true connection happens. There are many people in the recovery world that I haven't spoken to that I could name off the top of my head. But the minute I see them, we generally pick up from where we left off. It's like, oh my gosh, where you been? How come you don't stay connected? It's none of that. It's about the here and now. It's about let's just be upfront and honest with each other. And this is what's going on. I think your opening question to me, if I could reflect back, was what's going on with you? How
Yeah.
are you doing? And to me, that was like that kind of sets things up. It's like, hey, let me catch up with you, and this is what's happening. I think the last time we spoke, my mother had just died back in November of last year, and still sort of working through that piece of it. And, and these are just like letting us know, like this is where we're at, in our day. So
Mhm.
yeah, I kind of got lost in my thoughts here.
That's okay. Yeah, but I hear that there is, yeah, there is that sort of connection that you and I can step into, and it's there that there's trust there, there's shared experience, there's shared interest, but I think it also has to do with like we both are fully in the moment, and
Yeah.
like I'm like, well, like 99% like non-distracted. There's always a little bit of distraction going on, but yeah, it and that experience that I think I have with you right now, that I've had with some really good friends over the years, where it's like this person is fully invested in me right now, and I'm fully invested in this person, and sometimes that's accompanied by a lot of self-revelation, but not always. And I'm in some of my more recently developed friendships, I'm kind of discovering that realm of I haven't gotten to know everything about your life yet. I haven't revealed everything about my life, and we might even have like some really different interests, but were we're fully present together.
Yeah.
Or I mean, in the case of people in my parish, we're doing these shared rituals, these shared practices. We have this like shared object of focus, and there's something connective there. So I guess I'm wondering a little bit too, because like I'm thinking about like the in the moment conversational connections you could have, but also the way you connect as you live with a person, or you share a lot of life with a person. That there's ways to connect there too. But
I guess one thing that comes to mind is I live with curiosity. And I think it's a very healthy curiosity. Um, I'm always curious, like, gee, I wonder what Reese is up to these days, or wonder what he's doing. And, remembering your humble beginning. In fact, even going further back before you even started, your practices, and where you at and how we met. Just all of that. It's just sort of like, it's, I can't, I'm trying to think how many years it's been, but it's been a while. Um, and when I look at that, and I'm still that same person, whereas I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you've done, what you've accomplished, and what you continue in terms of what you want to accomplish in life. But you're right, there are some elements in your life that I know very little or nothing about, and vice versa, and that's okay.
yeah,
you know
yeah,
that doesn't make or break any kind of relationship. I don't think, in my opinion. But then again, getting to know the person and getting to know where they're at, it's always a new adventure for me. Because I'm always curious.
yeah,
I'm very curious about your relationship with your with your parish, for example, right? because I've been struggling to get back to the church because of quote unquote what happened to me, and that silly stuff. And it'd be great to have that conversation, and so on. So that, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. I always like talking about that stuff. Um, one question I want to touch on a bit. So as you and I are talking about honesty as part of connection, and we can maybe even say just kind of like reveling in what the experience of connection is, because we both experienced it, with each other, with others, and the sense of taking down the masks, setting aside the parts, knowing and being known. And we can say from experience that it's great. It's really wonderful. And probably also point to some science that's saying, like, when people can get in this sort of like attuned state, it's really healing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
One of the things that comes up though, again, as I'm working with the guys I'm working with, and they're doing the recovery work, working really hard, that idea is terrifying. Um, or like you're talking about it, and I'm gonna have to borrow this language of looking at each new relationship as an adventure, as like, hey, here's the excitement, here's the novelty. Like, can I get to know this person's like internal world? Can I get to know their emotions? Um, I think that could be a really helpful thing, because it's like for a lot of people, there's this idea of like, oh, if people know me, they're gonna not like me or they're gonna reject me, and so there's a lot of fear around that idea. And I wonder, how would you encourage someone in that spot, or what would you say to that?
I just believe that humans are connected they're connected organisms, and they cannot live alone. Our Surgeon General, or our drug czar in the United States, talked about that incredible disease known as loneliness, and he brought it to the forefront. He talked about his loneliness and what that meant to him. That one hit home for me, because I never looked at it from those pair of glasses. And when I heard him speak so eloquently about loneliness and his own adventure, I thought, we are creatures that need to be connected with other human beings. Despite what's going on in Washington with all the this, that, and the other thing, there's still that connectedness that we all need as human beings. So why not go on the adventure? It doesn't really matter what the other people think. When I first came into recovery, I remember somebody say, at that time he was an old timer, right? I think he had like 5 years, and and to me that was an impossible thing. I was like, who can have 5 years sobriety? And he said to me, "It's none of my business what I think of you." Uh, okay, it's none of my business what I think of you, or rather, it was none of my business what you think of me. I was like, oh, okay, what? I don't understand it, but it's my business to understand, to talk about screwing up a great line.
That's
But
okay.
it was none of my business. It's my business of what I think of you. That's what it was. It's none of my business of what you think of me. In other words, what your opinions are, etc. They belong to you, etc. But it's my business of what I think of you.
Mhm.
And when he said that, I thought, okay, that makes no sense. I didn't understand. It took me years, years and years. And the truth is, it's kind of how I do things. Like, so somebody can have an opinion, a thought, or see things a certain way, and that's how they see it, and that's okay. And it's really none of my business. But it is my business of how I think of the other person, because I'm expressing it out.
Mhm. And it sounds like that taking ownership again, taking
Hmm.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, this is my mind, my inner world, and I'm responsible for that. And because that's what I can affect, and that's what I use, that's what I experience. It's not my fault what you think of me. It's not my responsibility. It's not
Yeah.
within what I can change. And so to fixate on that, or to put hope in that, or to like be contingent upon you thinking a certain thing of me, just feels really precarious.
Well, it's just what happened just now. I screwed up that line, but then took ownership and thinking, okay, well, I didn't say it right. Let me say until I get it right.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. or I'm not a bad person, I'm okay, that sort of thing is what I say in my head. It's like, okay, well, you said it wrong. Just try it again and say it right. Right. And so it is about taking ownership. It's about being honest with the other person. It's about respecting where they're at. I talked a little bit earlier about that longevity thing that they were doing a study on. And the other one was connection, living together, and sort of being able to work with each other and knowing everything about each other. So again, that's another element of you know that human connection, if you will.
Hmm. Yeah. To Yeah, that idea. There's these people that I share a lot of life with, and yeah, at least a couple of people who know everything about me. There can be something that's on the one hand, kind of there could be something kind of terrifying about that, but it could also be
Yeah,
like
yeah,
exhilarating too. Be like, wow, like somebody knows me and likes me still.
yeah.
And like when I've experienced that, and I'm delighted I have experienced that quite a few times. I've been able to reveal a
Yeah.
lot, like some really deep things with people and have them still like me and want to be in a relationship with me and everything. It's really wonderful. It's really healing. It's always a risk. I mean, like the risk never goes away. But that same thing that once could have been terrifying is now really exhilarating and also just really affirming, because it's like, hey, I am a real person. I get to be a real person. I don't have to hide copious amounts of myself just to be accepted by you.
Yeah.
That's the gift that you offer to me. That's the gift that I offer to you. We do that for each other. And yeah, there is something incredibly healthy about that.
Back in 1978, did I go there? Yeah. But back in 1978, I remember, and I'm sure I'm not the origin of this saying, but it's something that I wrote in my high school. What do you call those books? Yearbook.
The Chopper Keepers.
Yeah. And in the very front page, and it says, "What is life without adventure? Without adventure, there is no life." And I've lived through that, and I've also lived through the disco era and the '90s, and so on and so forth. So yes, a lot of adventure out there, and the nice thing is that there's still a lot more. So even though that time has elapsed, I do believe that life is about adventure, trying new things, because you'll never know. I tried, Tai Chi one day, and I thought, oh, that's silly. Oh, why would I do that? Oh, I'm not going to learn. What? That's just for old people. Well, today I'm an old people. Uh, and and when I tried it for the first time, it was frustrating. I can't do it. This is silly. And, trying to do those moves really, really slow. And, the instructor and telling you you're not getting it right. And Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off. And I finally got it. And it was towards the end of that 1 year that I committed myself to, that I said, okay, I like this. This is so calming, so peaceful. Life is about adventure. So what is life without adventure? Without adventure, there is no life.
Hmm. Yeah, I really love that. So, in conclusion, thinking about again, honesty, authenticity, connection, things we've been talking about. Any last thoughts, words of advice for, say, like a person who's still newish to recovery work, kind of in the first 2 years, kind of struggling to be honest, struggling to be vulnerable with people. What would your advice be?
Try to learn how to reflect. Try to learn how to reflect on what it is that you said, what it is that you did. This is afterwards. And eventually you'll get to the point where you can reflect before you say and before you do. um, and it's work and it's a practice, like anything else that we do, like cooking or lifting weights. It is all about the practice, and so why not invest in yourself, practice with yourself, um, the work that you're soon to embark on, so that you can live a happy, healthy, and recoverable life.
Yep. The practice of connection and of honesty. That's perfect. Um, I appreciate you being here. If a listener wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
What is the best way to get a hold of me? I I would imagine through my email or my phone? I mean, is that something that
That could
I
work
can blurt out, or
if you want to, and I can definitely put it in the liner notes as well. So
yeah, sure. Go ahead and put it in there, and they can connect with me anytime.
okay, sounds good. That'll be there. And thank you to the listener for following the show and being here with us for today. You can visit my website as newpatterncounseling.com. That's the website for my clinic. We have a great team that supports recovery from all sorts of addictions, and we are accepting new clients. To learn more about the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/outer circle, and you can throw us some dollars, send some reviews, and that will be very helpful for us also. We're also on Instagram at New Pattern Counseling, and love to hear from your listeners. Even if you disagree with us, that is great foundation for our dialogue, and all will be welcome. So thank you again, and we'll be back with more conversations next week, and look forward to connecting with you all then. Thank you.
So all this was